Folks, welcome to another Shop Talk, and we are in what I think is slowly becoming the center of racing here in Kansas City. We are in Piper, and we are at A.J. Tice's race shop, we'll call it. And we are here with Danny Charles, and we're going to talk with Danny a little bit about his racing career. Danny, unlike so many other people that have just started out in racing in some type of form in a lower area, you started out in the rodeo. And you did that from 14 till 19. And first of all, I'd like to know, how in the world did you get started doing rodeo?
I had a job where it was a horse ranch right down from my house, and I worked there, and they had a rodeo come through, and I seen that and had to have a piece of it.
And a big part of it was working on the farm, though, and being around those animals. And because I think to be able to participate in rodeo, it's like so many other things when you start out when you're young like that, you just kind of, I don't want to say build up a resistance, because that's not true, but you just get used to working with animals, and it's not as bad as it is if somebody had to step into it.
Well, I had never been around animals at all when I started. Couldn't ride horses, knew nothing about it, but just knew that it was a needed sport and rough, and I liked that.
You like the idea of it. I understand, too, you did pretty good at it. You were a champion at steer wrestling and bull riding. Now, was that, I can't remember what they call it, but there's a circuit right here around the Midwest?
Yeah, I was in the youth circuit in Missouri, so it was the Missouri Rodeo Association, so it was a lot of fun. And
those were your two favorite events. I think you were telling me you also participated in the all-around.
Yeah, well, bareback was probably my favorite bronc riding, but, you know, it paid the most money riding bulls, so
yeah,
it's kind of one of the things, you go where the money is.
And it was probably more so than racing, because you don't actually have the equipment in rodeo that you have to come up with in racing. So you actually made a little money at it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. Put a little money in the pocket, which never hurts.
Yeah. And how many states or whatever did you travel to do this, or was it pretty much just here?
Just pretty much around here.
Just around the Kansas City area?
South Missouri, and about the farthest I went. Illinois maybe, but pretty much around here in Kansas and Missouri.
And no injuries?
Not really.
That's amazing. Seeing those guys do that, it's how you could do that for very long and not get some kind of an injury. It's unbelievable. If you were not racing, would you go back to rodeo?
No. I mean, it was something I did in the past. It was a lot of fun, and I was lucky to make it out without ever getting hurt, so I'm not going to push my luck with that. Yeah. Plus, I'm a little tubbier than I was then.
Don't have that lean, mean look that you had then.
Exactly.
Okay. Before we get into your racing career, I know your boys race go-karts. How does it make you feel being there more or less as the crew chief with these little guys and not being behind the wheel?
Oh, we haven't raced for quite a while, but when they did run, it was a lot of fun. And I raced them back when I wasn't quite as serious about racing as I am now. But you know, we enjoyed it, and it was neat to watch them and watch how different the two boys were and the way they raced, and it was just it was a good time while it lasted.
Yeah. I think I remember talking to you one time, and you were telling me that you were at the go-kart races, and the thing about it to you was they used to come to you and say, "Dad, it's not fast enough. It's not fast enough. You got to make it faster." And
that's when normally I'd tell them, "Well, maybe you need to learn to be a little faster."
Oh, be darned. That had to have been a great experience. Haven't had that opportunity with my kids. Of course, my oldest boy's 47, so I don't think it's going to come back around. But in 99 and 2000, actually kind of when you get your career started, in that your mom says, "Hey, Dan, if you'll give up the rodeo, we're going to help you get into a race car."
Yeah, and that's kind of how it came about. She never liked the bull riding, any of that stuff. She was always worried. So I'd gotten settled down, married, had kids, and needed something to do. So racing was kind of an obvious choice, considering I had a pretty good background in it. So that's where I went with it, and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. In 2001, though, you do get the car together, and that's going to be your first year on the track in a factory stock at Lakeside and Heartland Park. And gee whiz, must have been a fast learn. You get Rookie of the Year at both tracks, and you win the points championships at both tracks.
Absolutely, and that was a year of learning. You know, I mean, I learned more in the first year than I'll ever learn in my entire career. Just, you know, one of building the car and having to build it from scratch, the ground up, and learning how to take my dad made me have an underpowered motor to teach me how to drive the car, and just a lot of learning how to keep your temper in check, and just a lot of fun was involved in that year. And you know, I was lucky to come out of it where I did.
It must have been great though, having that knowledge and that experience back there behind you.
You know, he really didn't help me much, because he had said the cars were so different from back when he ran them that nothing really translated. So you know, he basically said, I'll get you in the ballpark, but then it's up to you to put the time in and the effort in to learn suspension and learn how to make a car work. And you know, of course he was always there for advice, and his crew was an excellent crew, and made sure I had a good car that didn't break down very often, which was probably the biggest key to that year.
All right, okay. In 2002, though, you kind of start splitting your time a little bit between MOLS, running some of those, and I know you run at a lot of different tracks, Nevada, Adrian, and Osborne, I think it was. Of course, they run just about everywhere, and you were also running a factory stock on the side, or not on the side, but also. And what was the difference to you, if you can recall, about that time, between running the two different race cars?
The factory stock cars are, of course, what they were called, stock, and they don't handle really well. They're real tubby. It's just like, you know, having a big 747 airplane trying to fly. They're slow. They don't move very quick. Where those sprints, I got in those, and they were just like jumping in a jet fighter. They went anywhere you wanted at any time, and it was just hammered down and just extremely fast. So it was enough of a change up that neither one of them bothered each other, because they were so opposite.
Danny, have you ever felt any pressure driving a race car, being Tom Charles' son? I mean, have you ever felt like maybe there was something to prove, or did that ever bother you?
Not really, because you can't look at it like that. You just have to take the positive from it and know that you have a wealth of knowledge there, and you don't always have to agree with it, and you don't always have to do what you know is said, but just to have that opinion there of somebody that knows and somebody that's been there is just a great asset. Yeah,
it'd have to be. And like you say, you know, what can you do about it? You can only go out and do what you can do. It doesn't add to or take away. It's still Danny Charles. For a few years, you're kind of in a little driving limbo there, not really, you know, having a lot of wins, but out there competing and, you know, being in the pack, so forth, seat time. But eventually in 2006, you do start picking up some feature wins, and you have 2 feature wins in 2006, and one of those is the Tom Carrick Memorial Race. And that has to be a special win for you. Boy, that's a big race.
Yeah, and I spent a few years in there just trying to learn as much as I possibly could, because I was racing against some of the greats, you know, with Chad Lyle and Johnny Allen, you know, Tim Carrick, Dad. You know, it was a full field of just studs every week, and I tried to stay out of the way as much as I could, but just try to learn as much as I could from those guys, because you're not going to get to race with them forever. And I really had a lot of fun in those years, because there wasn't any pressure. Modifieds are such a tough class that, you know, I knew I had the time to sit back and learn and just try to figure it out.
I was going to say, I think for a young driver, a lot of times coming up, especially through that class, is a lot of times you have to accept what the track's going to give you and what the race is going to give you. And where they get in trouble a lot of times, I think, is they try to make things happen. And then that's where trouble happens for everybody.
Patience is a big key to a lot of it.
Okay, in 2007, you come back and you have 2 wins. Then 2008, you have 2 wins. And we've pretty much touched on this a little bit already, but I'm going to ask you the question anyhow. What is it that really just makes it so tough about that modified class and picking up the wins? Is it the car, the crew, the car owner, or sometimes is it, as we talked about already, is it a little change in the thinking of how to approach a race?
That's a little bit of it. It's a little bit of everything. You have to surround yourself with good people and talented people. And the better people you have around you, the easier it is to display your talent. And Lakeside's a tough track. It's a tough place to race. You're racing against the best, and it is a big, mean track. So it takes a lot.
Folks, that's going to conclude part 1. We'll be back with part 2 and talk about Danny's championship season.